Hey everyone, welcome to the world of spirits. We're gonna dive into a real creepy experience today. Now, you've all heard about psychic mediums, right? Those folks with a special kind of ability. They can connect with spirits from another dimension. They do it in different ways, like sometimes a spirit takes over their body, or they use written messages or other stuff. These mediums, they don't even know they have this gift until something major happens in their life. This story's about a dude named Ethan. He's a freshman at an engineering college in Chennai. His childhood buddy Alex shares the same dorm room. The dorm's pretty old and their room's at the very end of the hallway. They don't have an attached bathroom, so they gotta walk down to the communal one. Ever since Ethan was a kid, he'd get these weird feelings, like he'd sense someone was around, even when nobody was there. It always freaked him out, but he just ignored it. He had a small group of friends, including Alex and this other guy, Mike. First year was going pretty smooth. They'd go to classes, watch movies late at night, just hang out, and before they knew it, first semester was over. When semester break started, the dorm emptied out real quick. Ethan and his friends had a couple days before their train home, so they were hanging out with a few other stragglers. One night, they were talking about horror movies and creepy stories, and Mike suggests, "Hey, let's check out DeMonte Colony." DeMonte Colony's supposed to be one of the most haunted places in Chennai. Nobody goes there at night. Alex was like, "Nah, we're good," but after some serious convincing, he caved. Mike had a bike, and he knew the city like the back of his hand. So they hopped on and headed to DeMonte Colony. When they got to the colony gate, it was dead silent. Like, eerily silent. A few dogs were standing there, but they weren't barking, just staring. It was kind of weird, but they brushed it off. They jumped the gate and went inside, and the silence just got thicker. It felt like they'd stepped into another dimension. As they walked deeper into the colony, Ethan's unease grew. Walking along, Ethan started hearing these strange noises, muffled sounds like whispers he couldn't make out. He looked around but saw nothing. Then he spotted a little kid standing in front of a house. By the time he tried to point him out to his friends, the kid was gone. He told them what he saw, but they saw nothing. That's when they all started getting freaked out and decided to bail. They were heading back to the gate when the same kid suddenly appeared in front of their bike. The bike was going fast, so they slammed on the brakes and tumbled. Next thing Ethan knew, he was waking up to some locals helping them. Alex and Mike had some scrapes and bruises. Ethan asked about the kid, and the locals said there was no kid. They told him, "People get hallucinations here at night. You know about this place, right?" Ethan knew they weren't hallucinating. They went back to the dorm, but Mike started feeling sick. He got a fever and a bad headache, so they canceled their train tickets and stayed in the dorm. Ethan and Alex were in Mike's room. Later that evening, Ethan said he was going to take a shower. Alex said he'd go grab some food. When Ethan went into the bathroom, the lights went out. The darkness brought back the memories of the colony, and Ethan got spooked. He peeked out the bathroom door. The hallway lights were on, just not the bathroom. He looked in the mirror and saw another guy standing there, smiling at him. Ethan slammed the door shut. He thought, "We're the only ones here. Who's that?" Then he heard the faucet running. He opened the door again and the guy was gone, but the faucet was running. Ethan stood there, heart pounding, trying to figure out what was going on. He was about to freak out when his phone suddenly buzzed, loud as hell, right in his pocket. He jumped, pulled it out, but there was no notification, no call, nothing. Just the sudden buzz. He was officially creeped out. He yanked open the bathroom door and bolted back to his room. As he ran past the stairwell, he stopped dead in his tracks. Standing at the bottom of the stairs was a woman. Her back was to him, but he could tell she was just standing there, still as a statue. He didn't know how a woman had gotten into the dorm, especially with only them there. He spun around, ready to run back to the bathroom, but then thought, "Nah, something's in there too." He turned back, but the woman was gone. Vanished. He took a deep breath, gathered his courage, and sprinted to his room. He burst through the door and yelled at Alex and Mike, "Dude, the lights went out and I saw some seriously messed up stuff." Alex looked at him confused and said, "What are you talking about? The lights are on." Ethan looked around and sure enough, The room was lit up. He looked out the window and the whole dorm was lit up. "What the?" he muttered, totally freaked. He sat down, trying to process everything. "Maybe you're just stressed from last night," Alex said. "Try to relax." They ate the food Alex brought back, and then tried to get some sleep. That night, Ethan had a seriously messed up dream. He saw the dorm room window, the one with those little glass partitions. In his dream, a gust of wind flew in through the window and took the shape of a woman, the same woman he saw by the stairs. She walked towards him and grabbed his hand, pulling him along. He felt like he was in a trance, just following her. They walked through the dorm, and he kept bumping into the walls, making this weird echoing sound. Then he heard Mike calling his name. Ethan snapped awake and realized he was standing on the balcony, right at the edge. If he'd taken one more step, he'd have fallen. He wasn't dreaming. He was sleepwalking. Mike had seen him leave the room and followed him. He woke up Alex, and they brought Ethan back inside. Ethan told them everything that happened, and Alex said, "Just get through tonight, man. Tomorrow I'll take you to see Shyam G." Ethan asked who that was, and Alex explained, "He's like a really powerful priest. He's got some serious spiritual abilities." The next morning, they went to see Shyam G. Alex explained everything in Tamil, since Shyam G didn't speak much English. After listening to the story, Shyam G came over to Ethan, placed his hand on his head, and closed his eyes. Then he turned to Alex and Mike and said, "This young man is a psychic medium. He's a channel for the spirit world. That's why the spirits at Demonte Colony were drawn to him. He can communicate with them. And now they're trying to communicate with him." Shyamji told them that Ethan was like him, but Ethan didn't know how to control his abilities. Then Shyamji took a black thread, tied it around Ethan's neck, placed his hand on his head again, and closed his eyes. Ethan closed his eyes too. They were communicating, even though Ethan didn't understand Tamil. Later, Ethan told Alex and Mike what Shyamji had said. "He told me not to be afraid. He gave me this thread, said it was a protective charm from a temple, and told me never to take it off. He also gave me a mantra, said to recite it every morning and night, and whenever I felt scared or sensed something was trying to contact me. He also gave me his number, said to call him if I was ever in trouble." Shyamji said, "You're a medium, Ethan. This is going to be a part of your life now. You'll attract spirits, good and bad. You need to learn to control your abilities. If any bad spirits try to mess with you, call me. And always keep this charm safe." Ethan noticed that Shyamji was wearing a similar thread around his wrist. "Don't be afraid," Shyamji said. "You're strong inside. As long as you stay strong, they can't touch you without your permission." Ethan felt a little better, a little more positive. They left, and the next day, they took their train home. Even now, Ethan still has these experiences. He sees things, hears things, but whenever he gets scared, he recites the mantra and holds the thread, and everything goes away. He's learning to control it all, slowly but surely. So, life kind of went back to normal, or as normal as it could get for a guy who saw ghosts and heard whispers. Ethan was back at college, trying to focus on his classes, but it wasn't easy. Every creak in the old dorm, every flicker of the lights, it sent shivers down his spine. He'd catch glimpses of shadows out of the corner of his eye, hear faint voices when he was alone, stuff that would make anyone jump out of their skin. But he held on to that thread Shyamji gave him, and he recited that mantra, morning and night, and whenever he felt that creepy vibe creeping in. He started to notice patterns, though, like certain places in the dorm had a heavier feel to them, a colder air, a sense of something watching. The old library, with its dusty shelves and dim lighting, was a real hotspot. He'd be studying late, and the books would seem to rustle on their own, or he'd hear footsteps echoing down the empty aisles. And the basement, where they kept the old busted equipment? Forget about it. He'd avoid that place like the plague. It felt like a whole other world down there, dark and heavy, like something was holding its breath. One night, Ethan was working on a project in his room, late as usual. Alex and Mike were out, probably grabbing some late-night grub. He was deep in code, headphones on, when he felt that familiar chill. He paused the music, took off his headphones, and listened. Dead silence. Too silent. He glanced around the room, but everything looked normal. Then, he saw it. A shadow, darker than the rest of the room, moving across the wall. It wasn't his shadow, and it wasn't from anything in the room. It was like a shape, a figure, moving on its own. He froze, heart pounding, and reached for the thread around his neck. He started reciting the mantra, his voice shaking a little. The shadow stopped moving, and then slowly, it faded away, like smoke disappearing into thin air. He took a deep breath, trying to calm his nerves. Okay, just a trick of the light, he told himself, but he didn't believe it for a second. He saved his work, shut down his laptop, and decided to call it a night. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching him, even after the shadow was gone. The next day, he decided to talk to Alex and Mike about it. He didn't want to freak them out, but he needed to tell someone. They were skeptical, of course, but they could see he was genuinely scared. Maybe you should call Shyamji, Ale suggested. He told you to call if you had any problems, right? Ethan nodded and they dialed the number. Shyamji answered, his voice calm and reassuring. Ethan told him about the shadow, about the creepy feelings in the dorm, about everything. Shyamji listened patiently, then said, Ethan, you're becoming more sensitive to the spirit world. Your abilities are growing stronger. You're starting to see and hear things that others can't. This is a part of your gift, but it also means you're more vulnerable. You need to learn how to protect yourself, how to control what you see and hear. I'm going to teach you some techniques, some mental exercises, to help you build a barrier, a shield against these energies. They talked for a long time, Shyamji explaining how to visualize a protective aura, how to focus his mind and block out unwanted sensations. He told him to meditate, to practice grounding himself, to connect with his inner strength. You're not helpless, Ethan, he said. You have the power to control this. You just need to learn how to use it. Ethan felt a little more hopeful after talking to Shyamji. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but he was determined to learn. He was tired of being scared, tired of being at the mercy of whatever was out there. He started practicing the techniques Shyamji taught him, spending time alone, meditating, visualizing his protective shield. It was hard at first, like trying to learn a new language. He'd get distracted, his mind would wander, but he kept at it. Slowly, he started to notice a difference. The creepy feelings weren't as intense, the shadows weren't as dark. He felt a little stronger, a little more in control. Things started to settle down a bit, or at least Ethan got better at dealing with them. He was still seeing stuff, hearing stuff, but it wasn't freaking him out as much. He was getting the hang of that mental shield Shyamji taught him, and he was practicing his grounding exercises, like picturing roots growing from his feet, anchoring him to the earth. It sounds kind of cheesy, but it actually worked. He felt more solid, more present, like he wasn't drifting off into some other dimension. He even started to get a little curious, in a weird way. Like he'd be in the library and he'd feel that heavy presence, that sense of being watched, and he'd try to focus, try to see what was there. Not like he was trying to have a chat with a ghost or anything, but more like he was trying to understand what was going on. He was still scared, yeah, but he was also kinda intrigued. Like he was discovering a whole new world, a world that most people couldn't even see. One night, he was walking back to his room from the library, late as usual. The dorm was dead quiet. Everyone was asleep. He passed the stairwell, the one where he'd seen that woman, and he felt a shiver run down his spine. It was colder than usual, and the air felt thick, like something was pressing down on him. He stopped, took a deep breath, and tried to focus. He pictured his shield, those roots anchoring him, and he tried to listen, to see what was there. He heard a faint whisper, lie. Like someone was trying to say something, but he couldn't make out the words. He strained his ears, trying to listen, but it was just a jumble of sounds. Then, he saw a flicker of movement at the bottom of the stairs. It was a shadow, but it wasn't just a shadow, it was like a figure, a woman standing in the darkness. He felt a wave of fear, but he didn't run. He stood his ground, picturing his shield, reciting the mantra under his breath. The figure moved slowly, stepping out of the darkness. It was the same woman he'd seen before, But she looked different this time. Her face was clearer. Her eyes were sad. She reached out her hand like she was trying to touch him. He felt a pull, a strange sense of connection. He almost reached back, but then he remembered Shyamji's words. You have the power to control this. He took a step back and the figure stopped moving. It stood there for a moment, then slowly faded away, like smoke in the wind. He stood there for a long time trying to process what he'd seen. He wasn't sure what it meant, but he knew one thing. He wasn't as scared as he used to be. He felt like he'd faced something real, and he'd come out on the other side. He went back to his room, feeling strangely calm. He didn't tell Alex and Mike what he'd seen. He didn't want to freak them out. He just went to sleep, and he slept soundly for the first time in weeks. The next day, he called Shyamji and told him what had happened. Shyamji listened, then said, Ethan, you're learning. You're learning to control your abilities, to understand what you're seeing and hearing. This is a good thing, but it's also a dangerous thing. You're opening yourself up to the spirit world, and you need to be careful. Not all spirits are friendly. Some are lost, some are angry, some are something else entirely. You need to be strong, Ethan. You need to be vigilant. Ethan took Shyamji's words to heart. He knew he was playing with fire, but he also knew he couldn't turn back. He was a medium, and this was his life now. He just had to learn to live with it, to control it, and to stay safe. So, Ethan's life became this weird balancing act. He was still a college kid dealing with classes, exams, and all that, but he was also dealing with, ghosts and spirits and all that jazz. He got pretty good at managing it, though. He'd learned to tune out the background noise, the whispers and shadows, and he'd only pay attention when something really stood out. He was like a spiritual bouncer, keeping the unwanted guests out of his head. He even started to use his abilities, in a way. Not like he was holding seances or anything, but more like he was helping out lost souls. He'd sense a presence, a lingering energy, and he'd try to figure out what they wanted. Sometimes it was just a matter of acknowledging them, letting them know they were seen. Other times it was more complicated, like helping them find closure or move on. It was weird, yeah, but it felt right. Like he was doing something good, something meaningful. One night, he was back in the library, studying for finals. He was deep in his books when he felt a strong presence, a wave of sadness and fear. He looked up, and he saw a young woman, maybe a student, standing by the bookshelves. She looked lost, confused. He walked over to her and she looked at him, her eyes filled with tears. I'm lost, she said, her voice barely a whisper. I don't know where to go. Ethan felt a pang of sympathy. He knew what it was like to feel lost, to feel like you didn't belong. He sat down with her and she told him her story. She was a student at the college, but she died in a car accident a few years back. She was still stuck here, unable to move on. She was scared, and she was lonely. Ethan listened to her, and he tried to comfort her. He told her that it was okay to let go, that she wasn't alone. He told her about the light, about the other side, and he told her that she would be okay. After a while, she started to calm down. She looked at him, and she smiled, a sad but grateful smile. Thank you, she said. I think I'm ready. She stood up, and she started to fade away, like a mist in the morning sun. Ethan watched her go, and he felt a sense of peace, a sense of closure. He'd helped her, and in a way, he'd helped himself too. He called Shyamji the next day, and he told him what had happened. Shyamji was pleased. You're learning, Ethan, he said. You're learning to use your gift for good. This is your path, and you're walking it well. But remember, Ethan, this is a dangerous path. There are dark things out there, things that want to use you, to control you. You must always be vigilant, always be strong. Ethan nodded. He understood. Life went on. He graduated, got a job, started a life. But he never forgot his gift, his responsibility. He continued to help lost souls, to guide them to the light. He became a beacon, a bridge between two worlds. He was Ethan, the medium, and this was his story, a story of fear, of discovery, and of acceptance, a story of learning to live with the unseen and making the best of a really weird hand he'd been dealt.